That didn't even have anything to do with Mega Man. Just guys in suits walking around. Oh yeah, let's spotlight everyone's favorite Mega Man robot master, Businessman. His other roles include that one random Sears Telegames commercial from the 70s.
Now you can play most all the video games you'd ever want to play. Introducing the Sears Cartridge Telegame System.
How's my cosplay looking? I'll be sure to have it ready for next year's Comic-Con. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Retro Rampage, where I just wore a suit to play a 30-year-old NES game. Today's episode takes us back to the Mega Man Classic series for a look at Mega Man 3, released in 1990. Mega Man 2, as I'm sure most of you know, was a massive success both critically and financially, and to this day it's considered one of the best NES games of all time. With a game that successful, it only made sense to continue the series with a new installment, but following up one of the greatest 8-bit games ever created would be no easy task. Mega Man 3 had a rather turbulent development process, with Keiji Inafune, one of the lead artists behind the Rockman franchise, recalling the time as extremely stressful. The game's development was full of missed deadlines, key staff members leaving the project periodically, and an extreme development crunch during the last 2 months. As such, Inafune considers Mega Man 3 to be incomplete, as there were ideas and additional polish that were unable to be incorporated. This sounds like a recipe for disaster and an early indication that Mega Man 3 could be the black sheep of the original trilogy, but we won't know that until we play it. For the meantime, though, I am glad to say that the box art has improved since Mega Man 2. No longer does it look like a bad cosplay, but something about Mega Man himself here just looks off. It's gotta be the face, it kinda creeps me out, and Sparkman is looking a lot more mechanical here than he does in the game. I prefer the European box art, where everyone looks much closer to their in-game designs, except for Dr. Wily, who looks terrifying. Talk about turning a crazy old man into an intimidating villain. So far, things aren't looking good for Mega Man 3, and one-upping Mega Man 2 is a tall order, but let's try the game out and see how it holds up. Even though I've played the original NES version many times, I'm going to be using gameplay from the Legacy Collection just for the sake of video quality. I just wish I could use an NES controller for this, it feels so much better for these kind of games. Oh yeah. Mega Man 3 starts off with no intro of any kind. No cutscene, no opening text, just the copyright info and the title screen. This is probably one of the elements that was compromised due to the crunch development time, but make no mistake, there is a story. After Dr. Wily's second defeat at the hands of Mega Man, Wily has apparently reformed and joined forces with Dr. Light to construct a peacekeeping robot called Gamma. How this robot is supposed to maintain peace is never explained, but knowing that Wily is behind its construction, it probably involves a lot of explosions. Why Dr. Light would decide to work with his old colleague after he tried to take over the world twice is beyond me, but I guess it shows just how forgiving Dr. Light is. 8 robot masters sent out by both doctors to mine power crystals to power Gamma suddenly start going rogue, so Mega Man is sent out to the different mining worlds to secure the elements needed to complete Gamma. I have no idea where these mining worlds are located. The North American manual doesn't specify, and the Japanese manual actually refers to them as uncharted planets, so I guess Mega Man's going to space for this one. Just like Mega Man 2, the game starts with the stage select screen, allowing you to play all 8 stages in any order, but this time Mega Man himself is in the center, and his eyes follow the cursor as you highlight each stage. It's a small detail, but it makes the selection screen feel more alive over Mega Man 2's version. I like to start with either Magnet Man or Snake Man first. After teleporting into your first stage, you should be able to master the controls right away if you played Mega Man 2. Mega Man handles exactly like he did in the previous game, still capable of running, jumping, and shooting the Mega Buster like before, but Mega Man 3 adds one big addition to his moveset. By pressing down and the jump button, Mega Man can slide a short distance. This does slightly increase your movement speed even though it looks kinda silly, but where the slide really comes in handy is for dodging enemy attacks and navigating certain low ceilings in the levels. Friction also doesn't seem to be a thing in the Mega Man universe, since you can keep changing directions under a low ceiling and Mega Man will just slide forever. Forget Gamma, Dr. Light found a way to ignore friction completely. The addition of the slide allows for more varied boss patterns and opens the door to some really creative level design, which feels like a natural evolution of Mega Man 2's stage layouts. Throughout the 8 Robot Master stages, you'll travel through a lot of unique locations like Needleman's construction site, Sparkman's power plant, and the colorful caves of Gemini Man's stage. The levels are full of graphical details and mini-bosses that look impressive for NES standards, and it makes them a lot of fun to travel through. As is tradition at this point in the series, each stage ends with a boss fight with that stage's Robot Master, and if you can manage to defeat them, the Robot Master's weapon is added to your arsenal. I don't find the selection of special weapons to be as strong as that of Mega Man 2, but there are still some good ones here. The Shadow Blade is like a lesser version of the Metal Blade from Mega Man 2. It can't shoot straight up or down, but 6-directional fire is still better than the straight shots of the Mega Buster. The Magnet Missile is great for taking out enemies that appear suddenly, and the Hard Knuckle is capable of breaking barriers in some of the later stages, allowing you to collect extra items. But for all the good weapons, there are a few bad ones. I don't use the Spark Shock unless it's against Magnet Man since it's not very powerful and its ammo capacity is pretty bad, and the Gemini Laser, although powerful, only allows you to fire one laser at a time, leaving you defenseless if you miss. The one that everyone likes to make fun of, though, is the Top Spin. Since firing off those top projectiles in Top Man's fight would have made too much sense, Mega Man just spins around in the air. Aside from just looking ridiculous, its damage output also varies wildly depending on the enemy, and the fact that you have to get so close to hit anything with it means that 9 times out of 10, you're gonna take damage as well. Unless I'm fighting Shadow Man, I leave this weapon on the shelf. Special weapons, however, are only part of the equation this time. Remember the mobility items 1, 2, and 3 from Mega Man 2? In Mega Man 3, they've all been replaced by Mega Man's new robot dog companion, Rush. Although not all of Rush's abilities are unlocked at the start of the game, defeating Robot Masters will make them all available to you. The only Rush ability available at the start is the Rush Coil, a springboard that allows Mega Man to leap up to high platforms. But later in the game you'll get the Rush Marine, allowing Mega Man to travel through flooded areas, and the best one, Rush Jet. Once Rush teleports in, you're free to move anywhere around the screen as long as you have energy remaining. Your energy depletes pretty fast, but it only goes down as long as Mega Man is standing on Rush's back, so keep jumping to prolong your flight time. I think Rush was a great addition to the series, and a clever way to bring some personality to 3 otherwise rudimentary items from the previous game. From the selection of special weapons, to additions like Rush and the Slide, as well as the fact that you can carry up to 9 E-Tanks now instead of 4, this is definitely the most versatile Mega Man has ever felt up to this point in the series. There are a few times where the game will present you with options as to how you traverse the level. In Gemini Man's stage, you can hop across these platforms, or you can swim through with the Rush Marine if you have it unlocked. Level design like this, coupled with the Mega Man staple of choosing any stage in any order, means that the game has great replay value. As you travel through the stages, there are 3 times where you'll encounter this guy who goes by the name Breakman. It seems like his only purpose is to inconvenience you. He has a simple pattern of just jumping and shooting repeatedly, and once you beat him, he just teleports away and the level continues. He even helps Mega Man enter the underground caves in Gemini Man's stage, but then he leaves without a word. Weird. Eventually, you'll defeat all 8 Robot Masters and we can find out what's really going on here. Or so you thought. Yeah, out of nowhere, 4 stages reactivate thanks to this guy the game calls Doc Robot. This is one part of the game that never made sense to me. Who is this guy and where did he come from? I think it's implied that he's another Dr. Wily creation, but he just shows up with no fanfare, and after you beat all his stages, the plot just continues like nothing happened. Maybe I'm missing some kind of supplementary material, but if any of you know about Doc Robot's origins, let me know in the comments. The 4 Doc Robot levels feature remixed stage layouts and enemy placement, which means they're a lot harder. Shadow Man's stage is now completely covered with spikes, Gemini Man has the short swimming segment, and Needle Man's stage has a ridiculously long bottomless pit that you'll have to fly over with Rush Jet, being very careful to conserve energy. Doc Robot harnesses the special abilities of all 8 Robot Masters from Mega Man 2. The difference here is that you don't have any of your special weapons from that game, so these bosses have all new weaknesses. Doc Robot can be pretty challenging, and he hits like a truck, so try to keep your distance while fighting him. You'll fight Doc Robot twice per stage, and these levels are honestly the low point of the game for me. I don't hate them by any means, but it feels like these stages were just thrown in here for the sole purpose of extending game time, and they don't even have much of an impact on the plot. The game doesn't give an explanation for why he can use the weapons of defeated robot masters, and like I said before, he just shows up with no warning after the initial 8 stages. There's no build-up to him. Even some of his animations seem incomplete, so this is probably another victim of the rushed development. Despite that, I managed to push through and clear all of the Doc Robot levels. And no, you don't get to keep the weapons he uses, as cool as that would be. Pretty sure that would break the game. Alright, all the Doc Robot stages are done, and Breakman again? This guy really has it out for Mega Man. He keeps showing up at the worst possible times and he never changes his pattern. By this point in the game, you can take him out pretty quick, and back to Dr. Light's lab we go. Unfortunately, as soon as Mega Man returns, Dr. Light reveals that as soon as the last Robot Master was defeated, Dr. Wily stole Gamma away. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. I told you he'd never change his ways. I guess that's why the Doc Robot stages were in there, to keep Mega Man distracted while Dr. Wily stole Gamma. So you know what that means, it's Wily Castle time again, but by this point in the game, and especially after beating the Doc Robot levels, you're more than prepared for the challenge ahead. Actually, there isn't much challenge at all inside this Wily Fortress. The level design is relatively easy to traverse, the enemies are spaced out so you don't have to fight too many at once, and the entire castle is filled with energy tanks. I guess Wily was feeling generous today. Even the bosses don't put up much of a fight. This turtle just swims around until you kill it and it's a piece of cake with the Shadow Blade. Wily tries resurrecting one of Mega Man's original enemies with the Yellow Devil Mark II, and although some of his attacks are still hard to dodge, the Hard Knuckle makes short work of him. The game even has another callback to Mega Man 1 by having a boss fight with clones of Mega Man, but go in with the Search Snake and... What was that? 3 hits with the Search Snake and he's dead? At least the clone in Mega Man 1 put up more of a fight. In the next level, you'll find this teleporter, and you know what that means, it's boss rush time. But you've already beaten these guys, so use their weaknesses and knock them all down. After 2 generous weapon energy recharges, it's time to fight Wily one-on-one. The Wily machine puts up a good fight with erratic projectiles, and it even has 2 phases, but deal out enough damage and Wily is blown sky high. Ah, but of course Wily prepared for this. A fake. So that means we've got one final level to face off with Wily. The game once again gives you an extremely generous energy recharge, but after that, it's time for the final fight. Well, that's Gamma. Why is his head so small? Well, this is only the first phase. Take out the smaller head with the Shadow Blade and it gets replaced by a much larger one. You can use Gamma's fists to climb up to Wily, but none of your special weapons seem to damage it. You can try everything, but they'll all just bounce off. You won't believe it, but the one weapon that defeats Wily is the biggest joke itself. The top spin, and it destroys Gamma in just 1 hit. The top spin, of all things, is the game-winning special weapon. I swear that's a deliberate joke by the developers. Once again, Wily begs for his life, but the castle starts coming down on top of them both. Wily and Mega Man are both seemingly crushed beneath the debris, but a shadowy figure teleports in and rescues Mega Man in the nick of time. Mega Man wakes up back in Dr. Light's lab, unaware of who could have rescued him, but the whistle left behind clues in Dr. Light that it was actually Proto Man. As Mega Man goes for a run through the park to reflect on things, we get a rundown of all the robots Dr. Light created back in the first game, and before rock and roll, there was Proto Man, Dr. Light's first ever creation, making him Mega Man's brother. Although Wily's fate is left ambiguous for now, I have a feeling this isn't the last we'll be seeing of him. And there you have it, the end of Mega Man 3. It's definitely the longest game in the series up to this point, but it also does a lot of things that continue the series in the right direction. It usually gets overshadowed by Mega Man 2, but I think the third entry deserves a lot more recognition. Just like in the previous game, it has a group of creative bosses, unique level design, and it's graphically impressive for the NES. Not to mention the soundtrack. Oh man, the soundtrack. There's some pretty sweet stuff in here. I don't consider it as good as Mega Man 2 overall, but there are a lot of standout tracks. Snake Man, Spark Man, Top Man, the Weapon Get theme, the Wily Castle tracks, and of course the single greatest title screen theme in the entire franchise. Yes, I did just say that, now go listen to it. The unfinished nature of the game means that certain elements do feel rough around the edges, like certain sprite animations and the lack of an intro cutscene, but I don't feel that's enough to ruin my enjoyment of the game. Mega Man 3 introduced new elements that would become series mainstays, like the slide and the addition of 2 more staple characters in Rush and Proto Man. The Doc Robot stages do feel a bit unnecessary, but at their worst, they're just challenge runs of stages you've already beaten, and they don't take too long to complete if you know what you're doing. The game as a whole is also not as difficult as I was expecting. It has its challenging points, sure, but the initial 8 stages are pretty forgiving with checkpoints and E-tank placements. I'd recommend this as a good starting point if you're looking to get into the series, but the best place to start is still the normal mode of Mega Man 2. This is a game I can relax and play through over and over again, and still have just as much fun as I did the previous time. It's for that reason that Mega Man 3 is my personal favorite game in the classic series. I know most people are going to prefer Mega Man 2, and there's nothing wrong with that, but 3 just hit all the right notes for me, and it's an incredibly solid follow-up to one of the greatest NES games of all time. If you liked Mega Man 2 and still haven't played this one, you're missing out. Give it a shot on one of the many compilations out there, and I'm sure you'll love it just as much as I did. You all heard right, Mega Man 3 is my favorite in the Mega Man Classic series. That might be kind of a hot take, but regardless, I'm sure there are at least a few of you out there that will agree with me. Despite reportedly being unfinished, it's still an amazing game and definitely worth playing. With that being said, this episode of Retro Rampage is coming to a close. I really appreciate you all watching and supporting this series so far. It really makes me happy knowing I'm not the only one so interested by retro games and consoles. I'm excited to look at more Mega Man games in the future after this. We do have 3 more on the NES alone after all. Until then though, I guess I just have to ask one more question. You guys want to buy a Sears Telegames?